Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for coming. A very special welcome to Gary's wife Jill and his children Holly and Jake. Hi. We want you to know that we send you our very deepest condolences and all our love and prayers for strength and comfort at this very difficult time. We are here today to remember Gary and to celebrate his life. And we have a number of really exciting speakers. Our first speaker will be UCT's Vice-Chancellor, Dr. Max Price. Thank you.
Good afternoon to Jill, to the Dean of the UCT Science Faculty, Professor Anton LaRue, Head of Computer Science at UCT, Professor Sonia Berman, the CEO of the Hasse-Plattner Institute at the University of Potsdam, Professor Dr. Christoph Meinl, Head of Computer Science at Swansea University, Professor Matt Jones, Professor of Interactive Design at the University College London, UCL, Professor Yvonne Rogers. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, let me start by once again saying how tragic Professor Gary Marsden's sudden death was for all of us here at UCT, especially at such a young age, with such a young family. I can hardly imagine what it must be like for you, Jill, and for your children, Jake and Holly, to have that experience and to suffer that. Gary was an inspiration to all of us. He had an infectious energy, a love of life. He inspired us all, especially by the way he applied his trade with passion and innovation. He was indeed an extraordinary educator, and for those of us not so much in the department but in the broader university, this was the first way in which we knew him as an educator. Time and again, he was acknowledged for his innovative, diverse teaching methods and for his inspiring learning methodologies. He was praised for his outcome-based approach, which encouraged students, even from first year, to think like computer scientists and to solve problems. This was recognized in 2009 by the university when he was awarded the Distinguished Teachers Award, a rare honor in this institution, an honor which is recognized at the graduation ceremonies. Only 2 or 3 usually distinguished teachers are awarded this each year. And then subsequently in 2012, Gary was one of only 5 academics across South Africa to receive the National Excellence in Teaching and Learning Award from the Council on Higher Education, the HELTASA Award, from the Higher Education Learning and Teaching Association of Southern Africa. At UCT, Gary played an influential and instrumental role in the Department of Computer Science and its various successors beyond teaching. He was an innovator, hugely creative and energetic. He headed up the UCT Hasse-Plattner Research Centre and the UCT Centre in Information and Communication Technologies for Development, also known as ICT4D. He was also the co-founder and co-director of the Samsung Mobile Innovation Lab and the Nokia Research Lablet. But perhaps what marked him out, and these are represented by the units that he founded and directed, was his interest in Africa and his interest in finding solutions for Africa. He believed that a good way to do this was to engage local people, academics from the continent, to encourage them to study at UCT and to study ICT for development purposes, and then to go back to their home countries to teach their own students. In this way, he believed we can start to address our own continent's unique needs, but also creatively make the most of Africa's exceptional opportunities. Gary received the inaugural International SIGCHI Award. This was the award for social impact, the Social Impact Award for his work and that which it inspires. SIGCHI is the premier international society for professors, professionals, academics, and students involved in human technology and human-computer interaction. In recognition of his contribution and standing, his peers elected Gary to the CHI Academy, the Computer Human Interaction Academy, an honorary group of individuals who are regarded as principal leaders in their field internationally in human-computer interaction. Colleagues, we in the wider community of the university will remember Gary fondly as an esteemed colleague who was recognized for his innovation and commitment to the development in Africa, as a brilliant teacher, as a role model for students, and his passing leaves a huge gap in all of these areas. Our thoughts and prayers continue to be with Joel, the children, and the family.
Mrs. Jill Marsden, Holly and Jake, family members, Vice-Chancellor, colleagues and friends of Gary Marsden. We are here to show our respect to Gary Marsden, and it's a privilege for me as Dean of the Faculty of Science to say a few words this afternoon, reflecting on Gary's achievements, his major contributions as a staff member of the Science Faculty, and to share with you your deep loss at his untimely passing. As a faculty, we are immensely proud to have had Gary on our staff for the past 15 years. He was a true scholar and an academic, and an international leader in the field of expertise. Gary joined UCT in 1999 from the University of Middlesex as a senior lecturer and rapidly rose through the ranks to full professor in the faculty. Since joining the faculty, many generations of students have passed through his hands, either in class, where he lectured them, in practicals, where he shared his practical expertise and innovation in computing, or as postgraduate students, where he guided their research. These students will, without exception, fondly remember him and be grateful to him for his exceptional talents as a lecturer and supervisor, always demanding high standards, but in a gentle and self-effacing way, and for enthusing them in the field of ICT applied to development and in human-computer interaction and in mobile interaction design. Albert Einstein once said, "The value of a man should be seen in what he gives and not what he is able to receive." In one word, Gary was a man who gave. He was a stalwart of the faculty, always willing to contribute when asked, no matter the size or importance of the task. He gave much to his work, to his own personal research, to his teaching, and to the faculty at large. In particular, he gave to his students and to the poorer communities through his interests in providing practical and manageable information and computer technologies to improve their quality of life. His ICT4D Centre and the UCT Hasso-Plattner Research School, which he established and led so ably, served as a focal point for researchers who wished to create information and communication technologies that addressed the problems of the African continent by Africans. He had the firm conviction that the lead in ICT for development should come from within the developing nations themselves, those who knew best what was really needed and what the real issues are which are faced by so many on a daily basis. Gary was an outstanding academic and someone who rapidly developed an international reputation as a leader in his field for ICT for development and computer-human interaction. As a leader figure in the world in these areas, Gary brought immense visibility and status to our faculty. If he had not been taken from us at this time, I have no doubt that he would have gone on to have had an even greater impact in his field of expertise. It is hard to conceive that it was just 2 months ago, nearly to the day, that Gary celebrated hosting 2 very successful international conferences hosted at UCT, the 4th Annual Symposium on Computing for Development and the 6th International Conference on Information and Communication Technologies and Development. It is only when one loses someone of Gary's immense stature that one recognizes and realizes the size of the void that he's left behind. As the Vice-Chancellor has mentioned, and I won't repeat the details, Gary received many accolades during his time at UCT, both for teaching and research, both nationally and internationally. In short, he was a complete academic, excelling in both teaching and research. Gary was living proof how fine a person can be. He was wonderful. He was a wonderful colleague and a good friend to many in the faculty. The character of the life he lived might be summed up in perhaps a few words. He was sincere, he was earnest, he was humble. Our sadness at his passing is tempered slightly by having had the privilege to have known him and worked with him these past 15 years. The science faculty has lost a much-respected staff member and a world leader in ICT for development and HCI, an outstanding lecturer and a humble human being. We will miss him deeply, and our thoughts are with his family during this very difficult time in their lives. Thank you.
As head of department, it is my privilege to try and share with you some of the very special feelings that we have for Gary as colleague and student. What a wonderful colleague he is. He has such a wonderful sense of humor, and a very unique one. He would regale us with stories at lunchtime of the good old days in Ireland and the not so good old days in his poky little office at Middlesex University. With his fantastic knowledge of restaurants and even better knowledge of coffee shops, Frank tells the story of seeing Gary rushing across campus to a marketing committee meeting with his coffee machine under his arm. He says that, in fact, the meeting pretty much revolved around the machine, and very productive it was too. Gary was someone who could always handle tricky situations at staff meetings, no matter how difficult. Thank goodness. And certainly both Ken and I, as head, would go to Gary for advice and comfort whenever times were tough. It is really incredible that you would walk in there with a problem weighing on your shoulders and walk out actually enthusiastic with the solution that Gary had come up with. What a precious gift. Indeed, I can fully understand how his students speak so very, very highly of Gary, and how those who he supervised say that to them he has always been a father figure. That certainly makes a great deal of sense to me. And it's not only in supervision, but in all aspects of teaching that his success is really legendary. Whether it is creating posters for school children, or right through to lecturing to experts in international workshops, he has always been so good at getting it just right for his audience. Gary, for many years, held a special extra job. He was appointed as a student advisor, and really, what better person to help young people with problems over the many years. He has left us with many excellent initiatives that he instituted, from the Conversion Masters and the Open Evening Industry Showcase, through to no fewer than 4 research centres and research institutes that he co-founded. He is a charismatic and influential researcher who set up the ICT4 Development Laboratory here at UCT, which is a real accomplishment because it is cross-disciplinary and cross-faculty, which is a very difficult thing to achieve. And the fact that it is so successful, that it is this wonderful space for people from across the disciplines to research actively together, is a fantastic tribute, and it is a centre that is well known internationally and locally, and was praised even last year in the Science Faculty Research Review. I had some words that I was very keen to end off with, but we in fact got a lovely message from Susan Dray, who I think says what we would have said in such a beautiful way that I will read from her message instead. So Susan is from the USA. She has been a wonderful support for us. And if you look at her blog, you will see wonderful thoughts that have been shared by people from all over the world, as well as from many of you in the room here. And she says, Gary Marsden was a great man. He influenced the development of a profession by focusing on creating technology with people rather than for them. He was instrumental in creating a new important area, applying these ideas to projects for economic and social empowerment. His creativity, courage, and commitment in devoting himself so fully to this extremely challenging work have been an inspiration to me and to many. He and his students have done some of the most innovative and important work being done today, in my opinion. And although many feel they can't go forward without Gary, I am confident they will continue, both because he trained them so well and also because their work is such an important part of his legacy. True as that is, today I am remembering my friend Gary, because as amazing as he was professionally, it was who he was as a person that has made the most difference in the lives of so many of his friends, students, and colleagues. He was a true friend with an ineffable blend of wit, irreverent humor, true genius, wisdom, deep insight, and vision, all wrapped up in an orange sweatshirt and khaki shorts. Love was the root of all Gary did. When he spoke the truth to power, stood up for justice and integrity, and helped students and colleagues, he did so because he was, to his very core, a man who loved humanity and bridled at injustice. We all miss this genuine, funny, warm, humble man deeply. But we must remember that he has left us with so many gifts, and now it is important for us to bring those into the world as our tribute to Gary, as his legacy. He has enriched our lives and our world, and now it is our turn to carry that love forward. While we weep at his death, may we also be inspired to live up to his vision. Rest in peace, dear, dear friend.
Dear Gary Marsden, dear friends of Gary, dear colleagues, UCT and from the universities, Gary did scientific work. To be here and take part in this event is to show my personal respect for Gary, who was an internationally well-recognized researcher. I think we will hear more about his work. He was a teacher, well accepted, and he helped us to establish the Hasso-Plattner Research School at UCT. When I came here years ago, I was discussing with Gregor how to establish it. And Gregor said, Gary is the right man. And then I met Gary, and he was the right man. He was the right man to establish a PhD program with, meanwhile, I think 4 or 5 absolvents, alumni, got back in the world. One is the chief of Google Kenya. There are many PhD students continuing this, so it was a very good choice. In this sense, I have also to bring greetings of our colleagues from the Hasso-Plattner Institute for IT Systems Engineering in Germany, from the Hasso-Plattner Institute of Design Thinking at Stanford University, and from the other HPI research schools in Haifa, at Technion University, in Nanjing, in China. We regularly met, and for all of us it was news we could not. So our greetings to you, and the idea that we were thinking in each place, the PhD program needs to be very special in this context with the ability of the people. And the idea was to establish here something like an internationally recognized Center for ICT4 Development. So he filled this, and his respect in the international community helped that the people become aware of this activity. We will continue because we believe that this is a good place, and that the best we can do to honor Gary is to try our best to continue his work. So I asked all the people that are involved in this HPI Research School at UCT to do their best to prove that it's a good thing and that it makes sense to follow Gary, and with your own work you can show his honor. Our greetings and best respect.
So Gary and I did lots of talks around the world, and I wish he was here now to kind of jivvy me along, and he's not. But Gary would get very nervous when we're doing the workshops if the audience were too quiet for too long. So I'm going to ask you to do something. It might feel a bit uncomfortable, but just blame Gary, will you? What I'd like you to do is to turn to someone next to you, near you, perhaps someone you don't know. You just introduce yourself, and then just for 30 seconds, share something of Gary that made you smile. Okay? Get it? You got 30 seconds. Make some noise. If you don't want to do this, say something else. Okay. So you know that's perhaps the most eloquent tribute we can pay to Gary. Gary gave us so many laughs and smiles, didn't he? And we just want to be so thankful for that. Now, after one of those workshops, Gary persuaded me. I'm a serious academic, but Gary managed to persuade me to escape the conference and go to a theme park. Shocking, and I'm sorry, Vice-Chancellor and Dean, that's what he was like. And the first ride I've written Gary chose, he was much better at theme parks than me, was an Apollo rocket simulator. What was he thinking? So we went through the door, and there were two choices. There was the green route that everybody was going through, everyone. And Gary said, why would we want to take the route that everybody else was taking? And I said, because I'm a hypochondriac, because that's the safe one. And he said, let's go through that one that says red route. And we were the only guys that went through the red route. We went into this, looked like the Apollo space station to me. We strapped ourselves in. Gary said, this is great, look at all these buttons. He was pressing things like this. And then suddenly, a huge blast. Like that. And our cheeks started to... you can just picture Gary's cheeks wobbling like this. I looked across. Gary looked at me. We were in a centrifuge being whisked around. And there was all these buttons. And it was a bit like being Tom Hanks on Apollo 13, but neither Gary or I were Tom Hanks. So we're pressing buttons like this, and it was terrible. It stopped, and we kind of trundled out. Now, this was Disney. How could they do that to us? We trundled out, we lay on the grass, we looked up to the sky, feeling absolutely nauseous. And Gary said, better tell no one, ever. And I'm sorry, Gary, but I really am. The two HCI professors were trapped in an interactive system and couldn't find the off button. Now, in his last email to me, Gary, which was in the middle of December, Gary said he was trying to solve a problem for his students. We've already heard that Gary was always thinking about his colleagues and his students, and he talked to me about you guys being his family. And he wasn't American, so he meant it. Yeah, he really, really... Sorry. Just got one more paragraph to get through. I'm sorry. That's the hardest one. He was always thinking of you as a family, and it's great to be amongst his family here. I feel really privileged to be here. He was worrying about what he could do for some students. But at the end of the email, it was quite an angsty email. He wrote, it'll be all right, because God has a plan. God has a plan. Gary wasn't a man of blind faith. God does have a plan. But the last sentence of Gary's email was, so best I go and find it. So this, at least for me, and I'm sure for you, it's a very disorienting time. It's like being in that centrifuge, and I don't have Gary there. But we all need to know there is a plan. Be assured of that. There is a plan, and together, certainly I promise to you, we will find it. Thank you.
The first time I met Gary, I was on a plane to Spain, and I heard all this laughing behind me, and it got louder and louder. And I wondered who it was, and I was about to turn around and do that cussing. And it was Matt and Gary having a good old giggle. And whenever I think of Matt, I always think of Gary. The two of them are soulmates, and they just loved each other dearly. So I don't want to wobble, so I'm going to read. I came across a video last week that Gary had made for me on my birthday in May 2012. It was my last day in Cape Town that year. He called it simply Cape Town Drive. He'd stuck one of those flip cameras on his car windscreen using blue tack, so I could record my last trip to UCT from Bergfleet, which is where he and his family live. When I was staying with Jill and his family, I used to love that drive to UCT every day. And Gary and me used to agree it was one of the most beautiful and breathtaking journeys. Any of you who've done that will know. It's past the mountains, the forests, the vineyards, and other amazing scenery. So when I came across this video a few days ago, I started watching it with some trepidation, but ended up laughing my head off. Besides the wonderful views, it captures half an hour of banter between us. We covered a whole range of topics, including telling porkies and stories, the Ivy covered, but not the Ivy League campus at UCT. What was causing the browny grey clouds to cover the city, which, as you know, is very rare, and the ethics of strapping webcams on cats to see where they prowl at night, and how instead of asking the cats to fill in a consent form, we could ask them to give a paw print. He also told many funny anecdotes during this journey. And one, for example, was how he discovered his really good friend Adam, who's here in the audience today, who's an amazing winemaker in South Africa. I thoroughly recommend his wine, by the way, who was also a DJ. Adam looked through Gary's music collection one day on his iPod and gave that kind of knowing look. And then the next time they met, downloaded him a whole new set of music to listen to. And we were listening to that music in his car on the journey. At the end of our trip, he worried about what the world would think about if they got hands on this video. By the way, if you want a copy, let me know. Two university professors talking nonsense. But there was plenty of proper talk, too. Gary had that knack of seamlessly switching from nonsense talk to serious talk during our conversations and back again. So we spent many hours when I was visiting him on my fellowship during the last 2 years, driving to stunning places he thought would impress me, and they did, where we would drink the most incredible coffee, visit shopping malls to buy the finest South African tat, and taste wine at the most amazing wine farms. All the time, we kept switching between banter and serious talk. But it wasn't just me that enjoyed his company in this way. He did it for everyone who visited and stayed at the Marsdens. There are many who benefited from his generosity, his sharp wit and kindness, and he always wanted to make sure that we had the time of our lives. During the last 2 years, we spent a lot of time talking about our mutual research interests, our passions and our dreams. One topic we talked about a lot was about how he felt about developing technologies for others who were worse off than us, whether they were old, poor, illiterate, no access to the internet, disabled or whatever. Gary was most passionate about helping to empower people to innovate for themselves rather than developing technologies on their behalf. And I was too. And last year we wrote a paper together about this topic for the ACM Interaction magazine that was called Does He Take Sugar? The editor of this magazine, Eric Stolterman, thought it was such a fantastic paper that he made it the cover story. We got lots of positive comments, and it made Gary proud as punch to see that. And there's a copy of the cover in the school office, I noticed. During the last few weeks, we'd started to write another paper on mindful technology and design, and I'm going to try and finish it, but it's going to be very hard. He still had lots of ideas up his sleeve, and I'm sure many of us will try our utmost to fulfill those. I've been given an extra minute because Ben Schneiderman, a professor of human-computer interaction at Maryland University in the US, who Gary had huge respect for. And whenever there was a problem, he would regale to his students, what would Ben Schneiderman do? Anyway, he had huge respect for him, especially what he was doing for social justice. And I'd just like to read a few words from his tribute. There's some photos he took, which you'll see later. The sadness and shock of Gary's death triggers a daily reflection about him, his work, and the fragility of life. Gary was a special person who hosted Jenny Priest and me at the University of Cape Town in September 2004. We greatly appreciated his charm and personal attention, which was devoted to ensuring we gained a deep understanding of South Africa's unique successes and opportunities. Gary will be remembered and missed for his unique personal style and his research impact. And finally, I'd just like to say on behalf of all of his colleagues worldwide and at UCT, that he will be remembered by all of us as the funniest and finest professor in computer science and HCI. Thank you.
I'm going to read as well. It's been a privilege and an honor to work with Gary for almost 5 years here in Cape Town. And thanks for letting me share a few thoughts and memories with you today. To say I looked up to Gary would be an understatement. Frankly, I was in awe of him. Every day I got to spend with him was a chance to learn and left clues about how to be a better person and a professional myself. Here's 4 clues. Gary he presented one of the most remarkable impromptu lectures I've ever seen. I don't remember why he had been called in front of this body. It wasn't his class. He had no notes, wasn't prepared. And he just sort of sat on the table in front of everybody, relaxed and engaged. I think he waved a cell phone around for effect. And he spun a story about the past and the present and the future of human-computer interaction and the particular challenges of working with resource-constrained communities. And he had everybody transfixed and inspired, and he did so without a bit of bravado or flash. And that's because it was really easy to spend time with Gary. Second clue is that he was the best host a newcomer to me here, a newcomer to Cape Town like me could have. Gary and Jill and Holly and Jake, you guys welcomed my family to Cape Town and made us feel like we were at home here, thousands of miles away from everyone else we knew. I know that there are lots of visitors coming through this beautiful city all the time, but I know the warmth we felt from the Marsdens was rare and honest, and my family treasures it. Meanwhile, back on campus, Gary was one of the most effective mentors and advisors I've ever met. I saw his magic up close, working alongside of him, advising a student named Shiko Gateau a couple of years ago. Gary concocted a mix of coaxing and pushing and supporting and enlightening to help Shiko along her own path and helped her sort of set her up to accomplish such amazing things after UCT. In this case, I'm, of course, very proud of Shiko. I'm also proud of Gary. And I know that it's not an isolated event with Shiko. So many of my collaborators were students of Gary as well. And this is one of the ways that I know that his spirit and intellect and perspective will still be part of my life. So I'm grateful to Marion and Marshani and Shiko and Bill and Andrew, among others, for writing with me and for working with me and for building on Gary's legacy. You guys are all amazing. And finally, last clue is that Gary's efforts at all the conferences I saw him lead were remarkable, from UbiComp in Disney, despite the adventures, and ICT4D in Atlanta, and Interact, and then the one I saw best was ICT4D 2013 here at Cape Town. At all of those events that Gary helped organize, everyone was having such a great time and things went so smoothly that I think a lot of the attendees never realized how Gary's subtle touches helped shift the intellectual agendas of those meetings and promoted in ways that promoted inclusion and diversity and justice and prioritized exactly the right questions for the fields. So I could go on, but I think that these sort of clues share a common theme, and that's that there was a sort of quiet genius in Gary, this sort of intuitive generativity of all the relationships he had. So, you know, every time you talked to him, it was a net positive, and somehow everybody involved came out with more than went into that conversation. And I know that that's part of why he became such a leader, an amazing person in the field of ICT4D that I know so well. for example. The things he built with his colleagues and students were about social processes like sharing and storytelling that worked for everybody, no matter how much or how little people might have to spend on a gadget. And those are wonderful, complex human concepts to spend time understanding and promoting. He also developed new methods for field research, using terms like human access point, which helped designers get better at working with the communities that they were with, building the things that communities really wanted and needed. I think he saw our field's intuition gap and really helped fill that. Third of four is he selected partners also deeply invested in their communities. And groups like Igkamva and Cell Life and Learn to Earn, each of them here in Cape Town have some of the best intuition about the communities in which they work, and it worked to kind of amplify his own intuition. And in the same way, he worked with and supported students and colleagues who shared many of these perspectives and priorities. And the centers he built here are lasting examples and culminations of that work. So, by the way, I should mention that there are efforts underway to establish a scholarship fund in this honor and in this spirit, and I think more details will be coming in a few weeks, but watch this space. So in the meantime, I'm sure you can think of examples of this sort of intuitive generativity in your own relationships with Gary. So sort of my last thought is Gary had this very interesting, unique collection of old technologies in his office. The old Macintoshes and bricks of phones and things. And I never, I loved the collection, but I never asked him what it meant to him. And of course, now I wish I had had the chance to ask, or would have the chance to ask. But just a hunch is that I think maybe in one way, keeping a stack of all those old technologies nearby maybe helped remind him, maybe us too, not to get fixated on too much on any of the new ones, right? That, from a technological standpoint, it's not about the tech. Because clearly Gary had figured out how to put people at the center of his work, not shiny or dusty technologies. And in so doing, he helped all of us be better scholars, practitioners, and people. I miss him already, and I'll never forget the lessons I learned from him. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. Marsdens, friends, colleagues from UCT. I guess... Yeah, it's hard to believe that I'm doing this, but I'm going to have to read so please excuse me for that. You might be wondering why somebody from film and media is speaking at a computer science memorial service. And the story behind that actually starts with a single conversation where Gary Marsden popped into my office unannounced and chatted to me, despite the fact that I was from a totally different discipline. These conversations profoundly shaped my academic career, took me far away from my home in English literature, and inspired me to do a PhD under Gary's supervision. I went on to establish courses in digital and mobile media, always knowing that Gary was there, my backup, if I needed him. And incredibly, Gary had similar collaborations with colleagues around campus in anthropology, fine arts, engineering, and these collaborations explored the whole gamut of what we call multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, and especially transdisciplinary goals. For the last 5 years or so, Gary and I worked as close collaborators on research projects for Nokia Research, Kenya, mostly focused on studying how young people in Kailicha use mobile media and mobile internet. And here I benefit immensely from being part of this multidisciplinary center for ICT4D that Gary directed. We co-supervised several amazing students, and that was just probably the heart of what we did together. Our media students were welcomed into the ICT4D lab, where they benefited from Gary's, but also from all the other students' understanding of how to foster creativity, how to build reflection, and then how to have a tolerance for failure. These are all integral to research and to the design process alike. The years of collaboration have kept me in love with my job. I'm not just because of Gary, but also learning through Gary about all these amazing people here. Also other colleagues, Nick, who's here, Edwin, who's here, Hussein, the other students that Gary worked with, brilliant students in ICT4D. And I've come to believe passionately in their project, Reconfiguring Technologies. Technologies designed for rich people and adapting them to the realities of inequality and poverty around us. Cash is in short supply. We buy low-cost second-hand phones. We share devices. Our electricity, our connectivity are pretty unreliable and expensive. We use a range of languages, often in one sentence. Generally, we just do things differently. And Gary understood how important and difficult it was to get to grips with the meanings of these realities. That's why he prioritized working with colleagues from humanities. Right, it looks as though we won't have the little cartoon that I hoped to be able to show. It's really for Jake and Holly, so we can show that some other time. But essentially what I wanted to say is university is really good at building ladders that allow us to climb higher and higher to levels of knowledge. Unfortunately, they're not too good, sorry, Dean and Vice Chancellor, at building the bridges that we also need, the bridges between the ladders. But that was one of Gary's specialties. He showed me that if you had the time to complain about problems, you probably had the time to get stuck in and build whatever you think should replace it. That applied to the couch in his lab, our work in this imperfect university, and also to our research. Take out the power tools, invite friends over for coffee and a chat, build what we want, basically start doing things differently. So that was inspiring, the idea that we could build these bridges, these shared languages. They were supremely valuable to our students when they leave the university. They're also supremely important to us when we move into the field and we research the messy reality of a clinic, a school, or a library. And generally, I think there's one thing that's a kind of takeaway often from my work with Gary. Can I say this with plastic farm animals? We once had this workshop around interactive 3D and how we're going to help people to build, 3D games. I was totally terrified. Got to Gary's workshop, and here were a bunch of cardboard models and plastic farm animals. Of course, this was fantastic. It leveled the playing field completely. The humanities people, could join the party, and we were all sending ourselves up with these, the kind of mockery of the farm animals. So the playful feeling that Gary understood was just as important to getting the work done there as the leveled playing field and the visualization. He saw the ridiculous things about the world so clearly. He knew how to poke fun at them so that we weren't scared of them anymore. They lost their power over us. And he was really serious about designs that challenge inequality. Let's remember, our technologies are designed in the north for wealthy northern consumers, made in China from Africa's blood minerals. They're designed for the profit of corporations. Gary didn't like this. He didn't rant about it like I do, but he worked to change it by talking to ordinary people about what it is they want to do with technologies, as Jonathan's explained so well. It meant he understood why I'd want to take a long-term view on our project, 3 or 4 years, rather than a short laboratory experiment or a short, sharp ICT4D intervention. We've developed a really close relationship with the Canva Youth NGO as a result. Those kids are now coming through and actually studying and succeeding here at UCT. And I guess I'll just try and kind of get over this last little bit, which is always the hardest. We're here together today because Gary's is gone. Our champion is gone. But we're still stuck here in the most unequal society in the world. The mobile industry still profits from the poor unfairly. Our ICT and media systems exclude those who need them the most. Edward Snowden is still in jail. states and commercial entities are abusing their power through our digital systems, even while seducing us with their user-friendly interfaces. Basically, there's loads of work to be done, people. There's no doubt that Gary was a uniquely talented human being, and, you know, when you compare yourself with him, it's just depressing. Right? So, but still, we should remember that his most important qualities are ones that we can all aspire to. He reflected often. He asked me, "What are we doing here, Marion? What's the point of this?" He was maybe a bit too self-critical, but he wondered about what's the purpose of our work. He understood we can only build really important things by working with other people. He saw the potential in those around him, especially the brilliant students we're fortunate to have at UCT. And he reflected the potential back to us and to others. And that's what it made us all love him. Like a really extraordinary number of people here today, I'm proud to be able to call Gary a true friend. He was indeed a rare, kindred spirit, and I miss him like a brother. Our lives and work were deeply intertwined, and every day there's something I want to tell him. I still need to tell him a lot. And I can't bring myself to close that door that he walked through, leaving just a sad and empty room. Instead, I want to open the door to all the colleagues, students and friends who I met through Gary, who shared his vision, and who want to build on his legacy. Because, friends, really, we are Gary's legacy.
Hi. I'm just looking at the program and seeing a lot of titles, a lot of doctors and professors ahead of me. I'm one of Gary's minions, as he jokingly called us. We heard from many people today about what Gary meant to the department, to the faculty, and to the university, what he was like as a colleague, collaborator, and friend. I want to tell you about what Gary meant to us, his students. So Gary valued people above all else, and I think that's such a rare and special quality that I'm just going to repeat that. Gary valued people above all else, and he loved his students. He may not have spoken those exact words, but I think what remains unspoken doesn't have to stay unvoiced. Because Gary showed us his love through his actions and care, through his deep commitment, and by gifting us his time and with his friendship. Gary has always been our greatest advocate and fan, our champion and hero, not in the classical sense of the word hero, but by inspiring us to find our own ways without imposing, by opening doors for us and introducing us to his many colleagues and collaborators from across many disciplines. And most of all, by always being there for us. Whenever we needed him most, Gary came through for us in big ways, dealing with gargantuan contracts involving many people, institutions, and agendas to secure funding for his students. And when paper deadlines or thesis hand-in dates approached, he would often read through and comment on our drafts in a matter of hours, motivating us, keeping us on track, sharing his brilliant insights with us, and clearing a path for us to succeed. And when we did succeed, no one was prouder than Gary. So about 2 months ago at the ICT4D conference, Tsabi was presenting her paper, and I looked over my shoulder to the very last row, and beaming with pride, there was Gary, in the modest role he played so well. Any compliments that came his way, he would shift credit towards the students. And for the difficult and sometimes confrontational questions that are often a part of the competitive world of academia, he would be ready to jump in and defend us and our work if we needed him to. But we often didn't need Gary to speak for us, because just knowing he was there would give us all the confidence we needed and to tackle almost any challenge. But not to mention that he also trained us to be good researchers. But enough about academics, as Gary made sure to tell us as well. It's only a part of life. In my native language, German, the literal translation for supervisor is Dr. Father. And Gary really embodied that role because he cared so deeply about our wellness and our happiness. Whenever Gary stepped into the lab, and he came by every single day, he would come to chat to each and every one of us, and it didn't matter if we were his students or not. And with his infectious smile and enthusiasm, he would invite us to join him for coffee by the couches, to ask how we were doing and what he had been up to, often what fun activities he'd planned for the weekend. In fact, he often spoke to us about Jill, Holly, and Jake, and he always listened to us and shared in our troubles and triumphs. Gary always spoke to us very openly and honestly, and he treated us as his equal and as his friend. And at least twice a year, he would invite us into his home for his famous braais. There we would get to see Gary, the husband and father, come into his own. We got to chat and have a laugh with Jill and play around with Holly and Jake. It is these informal interactions on the couches and in his home that we will miss the most. And it is through these interactions that Gary taught us and showed us some of the most valuable lessons of all. How to live well, how to be a well-rounded person, a good friend, a loving partner, and an amazing parent. To Jill, Holly, Jake, Roy, and Letta, all I can say is thank you for sharing Gary with us. And I can promise you that we have and will continue to cherish Gary and all that he stood for and taught us. And it really has been the greatest privilege for all of us. I also wanted to thank, on behalf of us students, all the people who have reached out to us from near and far, giving us their support, their hugs, and their love. And I think we've all grown together tremendously in these past 2 months in ways that really inspire me and give me hope. And I think that Gary would be the first to tell us how very proud of us he is. Rest in peace, Gary, and thank you.
As you already know, I am Gary's dad and my wife, Letta. Gary's mum. Firstly, a big heartfelt hello to everyone here. I haven't this bit written down, but I've been really touched by all the kind words that were said. I've had to wipe tears from my eyes. It's all been very touching. I want to thank you all who spoke for that. Also, I would like to thank sincerely all who expressed their sympathy, be it by word, letter, card, email, internet, or any other means. Thank you all very much. Next thanks goes to the University of Cape Town for organising this day in memory of Gary. Also, a big thanks for assisting him with his career and allowing him to follow his ambitions. We are extremely proud of Gary and his achievements, of which most of you know were many. To us, Gary will never grow old, as we who are left grow old. We will always remember Gary as an enthusiastic, happy and witty young man, going about his work with such commitment. When we come into this world, we should try to make it a better place in which to live. I've lost my place. Gary certainly did this. To us, Gary was 1 in a million, and we love him for 1,000,001 reasons. I would like to finish by saying there are 3 other family members in South Africa we are very proud of: Jill, Holly and Jake, Gary's wife and children. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Roy, and everybody who's spoken. Friends often ask me in passing, "Oh, Jill, do you know how to do this on my phone?" or "Do you know this or that?" And I say, "You're talking to the wrong Marsden." And I feel that today, the wrong Marsden standing here. I really, really wish it was Gary, but it's me today. I just want to clear up a few things while I'm here. Jonathan was wondering about the collection of old computers in Gary's office and if there was some significance about it being there. There was. I refused to have them in the house. I have a few thank yous to do, just to add to Roy's, just to really thank the Vice-Chancellor and the Dean for welcoming us here today, and Sonia and the Computer Science Department for working so hard to put this together at this time of year, which actually was just quite a feat. You'll have seen all the students already around campus. I do just have a sort of greater thank you, though, to give UCT as an institution for making one of my personal dreams come true. I have to let you in on a secret. Back in 1999, you thought that Gary had applied to come here to sort of further his career and take the next step at this prestigious university. But actually, the real story went something like this. I had done my schooling, grown up in Zambia, done my schooling in Zambia and Zimbabwe. And like many of my friends there, I was desperate to come to UCT to study and get a fine tertiary education. Unfortunately, at that time, there was no film and media department here. And I found myself in Scotland, one of 5 universities doing film and media at that time, back in the dark ages. So it felt like I was as far away from Cape Town as it was possible to be. My friends were all here. And I didn't know a single soul there. I felt like my dream was crushed. If we fast forward 10 years or so, having met Gary at Stirling, thank goodness I did go there. We were married, working together in London at the infamous Middlesex University, working in an industrial building with no windows, looking out onto the North Circular. Gary casually mentioned to me one day, "There's a job going at this university in Cape Town. Have you heard of it?" So not only did I meet and marry the man of my dreams from Scotland, or in Scotland, but he brought me to live in Cape Town, the land of sunshine, mountains, oceans, and one of my dreams was fulfilled. That's enough about me. It's the real reason we're at UCT. Okay. I sort of feel like I'm speaking on behalf of Gary to say that he was so appreciative of everything that UCT offered to him. First of all, a professional home, and then freedom to pursue his research and his teaching passions. So thank you. Thank you for the opportunities and the encouragement that UCT as an institution has given him over the past 15 years. He was truly proud to be part of this university. I now want to thank the Computer Science Department for being the brave ones who actually employed Gary on the basis of one telephone conversation and a cursory glance by a former staff member in London. Don't anyone tell the HR department. I'm sure it's all a lot more thorough these days. Having spent 7 years in Scotland, Gary certainly earned his place in the Computer Science Department almost instantly by being able to interpret for Ken McGregor in the staff meetings. But in all seriousness, Computer Science Department, we were so touched by the way you welcomed him and us, and the friendship that you offered to us when we arrived, and making us feel at home. And despite the very dramatic crane crashing incident that put his new office out of bounds when we arrived, it took us about 5 minutes to decide that the 2-year work permit we'd been offered would not be long enough, and we set about applying for permanent residency, which we were thrilled to get several years later. So I want to thank the department for believing in Gary from the word go, for trusting him, and for supporting some of his crazier endeavours. I'm sure you must have just shaken your heads at various stages, but also providing the environment for him to practice, to make mistakes, and to grow as a teacher and as a researcher and as a mentor, because he grew in that in the years he was here. He didn't arrive, fully qualified. He grew, and you let him grow. Thank you. I also want to thank the wider research, HCI, mobile computing communities that we've had representatives speaking from. Thank you for inspiring Gary, for challenging him, for giving him outlets and opportunities, and encouraging him to push the boundaries and test new ideas. I really appreciate those who've travelled from far and wide to be here today. Thank you to those who've spoken. It's just been so wonderful for me and for us as family to hear all these things. And I want to thank those who graciously gave up the chance to speak. You can imagine there were quite a few who would have loved to, but thank you for sparing us from being here all night. I want to thank Gary's students, past and present. We've heard a bit about them. You guys have become part of our family life over the years, and it has really enhanced our lives. I'm speaking for myself and Holly and Jake, to have you overlap with us. We've loved having you in our home, and it's been wonderful to share Gary with you. And we know that we've made friends for life, and I hope that you know that you'll be welcome in our family always, even though Gary's not here. So I just wanted to say, in case it's getting a bit intense now, if you're ever missing being bossed around as minions, come over to 24 Stock Road and we'll put you in your place. Okay. I'm going to finish now, but I just want to state something that's come up quite clearly in what a few people have said already. What to me is completely obvious about Gary's life and work and achievements that we've heard about is that he valued relationships above everything else, as Thomas said. He valued people. He prioritized people and relationships. He invested in them and was motivated by those. And the reason that so many of us have these stories to tell is because people were important to him. We were important to him, no matter how old or young, how humble, how lofty, how closely related, or how distant. He drew us all in. But not only that, he did not attempt to pursue perfect relationships with people in his own strength or wisdom. As a natural introvert who just happened to be very good at being the life and soul of the party, he worked hard to prioritize people, but he sought strength from his relationship with God. And because of the grace he received from God, he was able to keep giving unceasingly to so many of us. Jonathan mentioned Shiko Gitao, one of his former PhD students who would have loved to have been here today. And we've been in close contact this week. And she sent me a Bible verse this week, just saying, this sums up Gary to me. And it's just a short little verse from Corinthians. By the grace of God, I am what I am. So my final thank you today is to give thanks to God for the grace he gave Gary, and which Gary in return showed to all that he met and worked with. Thank you.